Your time as a business owner is worth $1,000 an hour. And if you can find somebody else to do it for $50 an hour, $75 an hour, you're still $925 an hour or $950 an hour ahead. So it's not about the cost, it's about you really need to look at the opportunity cost. Kevin, thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast today. Do us a favor, give us a quick intro, the name of your business, where you're located, and what kind of work you do.
Well, I'm Kevin Franklin. I'm in Home Matters Alliance is my business. I'm in St. Louis, and we're design, build, remodeling in a tight geographic area of older homes in the center of St. Louis. I have about a 3 to 5 mile radius that I've been able to work within and keep plenty of work going.
Very nice. Very nice. So we're talking about how you signed up and started working with Belay Solutions back in 2021, August of 2021. Sounds like when you got started. So let's go back before August of 2021. What sort of problems were you having that led you to work with Belay?
Well, there was always, we're a small organization. I've got a project manager, a sales coordinator, selection coordinator, that's kind of together. And then I was kind of picking up a lot of the other pieces. And there's always work that wasn't urgent, but sometimes important projects that didn't fall into the realm of anybody else's responsibilities. And so therefore they fell onto mine. They were just a variety of different things that I wanted to check out. It's like if you say, well, I want to have somebody do my payroll instead of doing it in QuickBooks, or I want to go ahead and explore doing it in QuickBooks if I have a payroll service. I never had time to get to those types of things, and they would always just kind of pile up and pile up. I felt the need to get some of those things off my plate, to move them forward. There were ideas that I had that I wanted to, it's like even back in the pandemic when we were talking about ordering things early, it's like, where do we store them? I don't have a shop. So then I had, that virtual assistant kind of calling around to various places and finding out what it costs to rent storage space and where they might be, so things like that I don't have a chance to really do, but, and so they're ideas, but you write a note and the notes keep piling up and you just don't ever get to them. That was really more the problem. I mean, there's other smaller things that, just, again, when you're a small organization of 3 or 4 people, you hate to dump something on somebody else if it's not in their purview and everybody's stretched thin. And so it was really a need for an additional person, but not necessarily a full-time person.
Before we hit record, you talked a little bit about a book that was helpful. Can you share the name of that book? And
right.
A little bit.
It was written by Michael Hyatt. It's called Your World-Class Assistant. And it just explains what an assistant could be, and an executive assistant could be. And he specifically mentions when he first started out, he hired Belay, for an hourly. They worked so many hours a week for him, and then he expanded that, and I think eventually hired that person on. But yeah, he did mention that, and I realized for the first time that I didn't have to hire a 40-hour-a-week position for it. I could hire somebody, more or less part-time, and I didn't have to vet them or anything.
What were some of maybe some misconceptions you had about a virtual assistant, or things you thought may be true about working with a virtual assistant that turned out to be misconceptions? Like maybe one of those was, I thought it was either 40 hours a week or nothing. And it turns out you can get some partial, less than full-time. Was there anything else that you believed to be true about assistants?
I thought of them initially as like sort of these temp services. So you hire somebody, maybe I had to vet them out. I had to hire them. They just sent me somebody, and then I had to tell them what I needed and train them and everything else. And a lot of that vetting process was done by Belay up front. And so they truly brought persons, they aligned me up with people that fit my needs, or a particular person, and introduced me to them and walked alongside me during that process. 30, 60, 90 days until that I was up and running with them.
Hmm. And what are some of the main tasks that your virtual assistant has been helping you with that have been most helpful for you?
I think initially I had a series of small projects, what I call projects. It was more project driven, and things that I had in my mind that I wanted to flesh out a little bit more. As I mentioned earlier, storage, a potential for storage of materials while we're waiting for stockpiling those materials so that we could have them when we needed them back during the pandemic times. Now we've kind of gotten used to that and haven't really had to need it. But there was I was going with Chief Architect, a program, and trying to get some information about that and getting online with it and buying it, purchasing it, doing all the things with it, trying to find somebody to help use it. There was a whole variety of those things that happened back in the beginning. And then later even in co-construct, which we use, there was a lot of things like, adding the files, the spec sheets or the line drawings about plumbing fixtures or window rough openings, all those kinds of things, making sure that those were added into the appropriate sections in your specs and selections of co-construct so that the guys in the field could click onto those and find rough opening dimensions for them. Just a variety of things like that initially. I mean, they just say up front that they would schedule your appointments and make sure they do your travel arrangements and do your calendar and monitor your email. I wasn't too interested in any of that initially. I was really just trying to get through a lot of the projects that I had, file drawers full of stuff that I wanted to, and things on my to-do list that I wanted to get done that I just never had time to do.
And do you have them monitor email and handle your calendar and that sort of stuff now?
I do now. I mean, starting earlier this year, I've worked it out with my assistant, Alex, and she has total access to my Google Calendar, my Gmail, and she screens that. One of the other tricks that I learned from Hyatt was to try to get your email to 0 every day and not be flooded with all that. So with Google, you can set things up, your primary, I don't worry about social because I don't even pay attention to that, but the updates and the whatever the other one is. Mm-hmm. Anyway, she kind of looks at those all the time. And then we have a system where I star the ones, or she stars the ones that I need to work on, and then she handles the others. And in Google, you can, I don't have to give her my login credentials or anything like that. I can just invite her to share. I didn't know any of that, but and so she can set appointments. I mean, she basically set us up. I mean, you sent an email out or Belay sent an email out and back and forth, and I just let her handle the whole thing. So, rather than, you think, well, I'll just make a phone call and get it done. Well, then you play phone tag for 3 or 4 times, over a course of a week, and then you finally get it set up, and then something changes, and I don't have to deal with any of that stuff now.
Nice. So what does life look like now that you have your virtual assistant in place and things are ramped up? What has it done for you and your business?
I wish I could say that I'm purchasing 45 hours a month, so I know that I'm saving roughly that. I mean, it's fair to say that I could probably do it a little more efficiently, but I'm probably saving a week a month, of time, and having her to take care of things. And so I'd like to say, well, I have more time for my kids or my family, but I have adult kids and all of that. So what happens is you end up, I'm focusing more on the things that I like doing more of in the business. So I'm not working any less hours. I'm still working that same 50 to 60 hour range, but I'm doing more of what I like doing and less of, a lot less of what I don't, it's just as sort of mundane administrative tasks. So it's allowed me to focus more on what is important, and instead of the other things that are not important and not urgent.
Yeah. What would you say has been the best part about having a virtual assistant from Belay?
I think the best part for me is that I have not had to go out and search for this person. And we actually had a situation where so I hired one in August, started working with Belay in August of last year. And come December, the first assistant decided to kind of back out, got more involved in her husband or fiance's business or something like that and backed away. And so Belay took care of the transition and brought in, based on my original interview with them and what they had determined I needed, checked in to make sure that that was still what I needed, found another person, had the one virtual assistant train the other virtual assistant and all the passwords and all the stuff and how to get in and do everything all on their dime, not my time. And so then I just had a different person. And so I haven't had to spend any time whatsoever running ads, doing interviews, training. Yes. I mean, I've had to train somebody to do particular tasks, how to use co-construct, things like that. But I have not had to actually look for somebody of the right character with the right values, as a team player. Belay has done all of that. And they followed up, as I say, 30, 60, 90 days, and then 6 months, and then a year. And they stay in the background and make sure, they like, well, if you can't talk to this person, then call us and let us know and we'll work it out. It's like, well, if I can't talk to this person, I don't need to have them. But so, I kind of go directly with them. But I think the best part has really just been that it's been pain-free. The whole process of they select somebody that's already got the credentials. It's not just like somebody they're sending you, because if it doesn't work out, then it's on them to fix it. And they say that they go through, I forget what the percentage is, but it's a less than 50% of the people that apply to work for Belay are actually hired at Belay. And so they screen things through quite a bit, and they've done like a 45-minute or an hour interview with me, recorded interview, so that they make sure that they know what they want. And then they show my stuff to potential candidates so that they're like, okay, yeah, I could work with this guy or whatever. So they take care of all that in the background. So yes, you're paying a little more an hour than you would if you just hire somebody yourself. But at the same time, you save the time of having to do all those things.
Yeah. You mentioned training. I'm curious, some people would be concerned. They would think, going back to misconceptions, they would think, all right, if I'm going to train somebody, they have to be sitting right next to me, looking at the same screen, in the same room, so I could train them. Have you found any tricks or hacks when it comes to training a virtual assistant that have worked well?
Zoom has been the best answer to that, sharing screens. And because my virtual assistant is in Phoenix. So, she's a couple hours away, and 3 hours with daylight savings time, because they don't recognize that. But
it's crazy Arizonians.
Yeah. But, Zoom has made all the difference. Prior to Zoom, I'm not sure if I would have had the same understanding or been able to do it as well. But, we can share screen. I can share my screen. She can share her screen. We're kind of in a virtual world these days anyway, and so I even kind of resist with my own team. The one gal's like, well, I wish we had somebody that was here locally in the office so I could touch them and feel them. It's like, why? Why would you do that? Because then that means I have to have an office, an actual office, and all these things. And that's just adding another $2,000 or $3,000 a month in overhead that I don't really need.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you compare a virtual assistant to somebody, like in your case, it's not like you have a spare cubicle or a spare office for them to sit in. It's, for a lot of people, they're working small office, home office. So, all right, there are all these obstacles that come up when you think about hiring somebody in person. Well, they have to have somewhere to sit. I have to buy their technology, buy them a computer, train them on this, and then all of these other things, benefits. What about this? What about payroll? What about this? And all of these obstacles. And it seems like having a virtual assistant, especially through Belay, just erases a lot of those obstacles.
Right. Yeah, it does. For me, it does because they say they want you to commit for a year, but they also will say that if for some reason it's not working out, they need 30 or 60 days notice. I forget exactly what it is. And it renews. I'm in my second year of it. And so I think it's been great for me because it allows me to have otherwise I'd have to go out and find a part-time person that is willing to work part-time from their house. And, I don't know what I'm necessarily getting. Belay's already kind of vetted all that out. So to me, it's worth it. I can't, if I have an employee compare versus what they're making or whatever, it's like they're a trade partner, they're a subcontractor. It's different.
Yeah.
They've got everything included with you. This is your hourly rate plus I'm paying all this extra burden on top of you. So I think it's for me it's been worth it because I can, if it doesn't work out, then I can call them and say, hey, send me somebody else. But it's worked out because they send you top-notch people to begin with. They're not just sending you somebody that has to learn how to use Word or how to use, basic technology or how to use Zoom or whatever. The first assistant had a Zoom account. I didn't even have a Zoom account, a business account. We used hers. She set things up. I ended up having to get it with the second one because she didn't have it. But it works well.
Very good. Good stuff. Kevin, I appreciate you taking the time to be on here. Good chatting with you. And thanks so much, man.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Nathan, thanks for taking the time to be on here today. Let's jump into it. Tell us about your business. What's the name of your company? What kind of work do you do? And where are you located?
I am own and operate Transform NC LLC, which is a general contracting company based in Southern Pines, North Carolina, kind of central North Carolina, about an hour south of Raleigh. Small town, kind of reminds me of Mayberry a little bit, but we focus on residential remodels, almost exclusively remodels. We'll get into additions and outdoor living spaces and things like that, but I primarily focus on clients that intend to be in their home for a while because those particular clients seem to appreciate the extra attention to detail and the benefits of something beyond a tailgate warranty. If all of us know that term. So really like to use the highest quality materials, the best labor and craftsmanship. And most of the time when you do that for the whole process, you don't really recoup that value until you've lived in the home a while. So I've been doing it about 6 years now after growing up, remodeling our family home. My dad's a mechanical engineer, entrepreneur. So kind of mistakenly assumed that because I had done trades-based things my whole life, knew how to figure things out, that I could jump into general contracting and figure that out on the fly because, 70, 80% of this is going to be technical expertise. And then I'll just figure out that other 20% or so on the side. But everyone that listens to your podcast knows that that's pretty ignorant, and you got to execute technically 100% if you want a lasting business and brand. But really, probably, my experience is like 20% of what it is to be a general contractor. The other 80 is business. And a lot of us get into the trades because we like carpentry. We like the technical aspect of it. We got some tolerance for risk, but my own weakness is management. My own weakness is letting go of the reins and tasking other people and trusting that if I give them the right instructions and follow up and inspect, that it'll be done right. And so that technical expertise and that can-do spirit has kind of plagued my business because, like we talked about kind of pre-interview, the not wanting to take the bags off, really kind of being scared of being in the office while stuff's happening in the field or trying to do the office work late at night after everybody's gone home and you're missing time with your family was kind of the reality for my first 4 or 5 years of business. And it wasn't until recently that I kind of said I either need to really figure this out or I need to shut things down. because the status quo of this workload, time away from family is just not cutting it. So I got to figure out what to do here.
But what you're saying is sounds very familiar, and I was guilty of the same thing. I was managing projects, thinking, I'm making all this money for this company. I could build really complicated projects. I'm building hospital additions and surgery rooms and that kind of thing. But wow, was I poorly equipped on the business side? And I'm curious, was there an event? Was there something that happened that led you to realize, all right, I've got to make a change, where you said, I either have to figure this out or we got to do something different? Basically, something has to change. Was there something that, like a moment where you came to that realization, or was it just, I guess the question is, what led you to that point to say something's got to change?
As the owner of your business, you're in the driver's seat. When things are changing, when market conditions are being changed, when government policies are being issued that affect every area of our life, if you're in the driver's seat as a business owner, you're in a better position than the employee and the guy that is relying on what is my boss going to do. So I kind of going through that and it kind of bracing for impact, but then ultimately sailing through it, coming out of it stronger and experiencing some of those challenges. I really had a desire to help other families, other business owners to build personal runway and be in control and have freedom to do what they want. And you and I both know freedom is mostly measured in time now. How much time do I have to spend on the things I want to than the things that I have to, and instead of reacting? So as I started to try to put the message out, produce my own podcast, talk to families and go to these conferences and see the look in people's eyes when I clearly identify their pain points. They shake their head and I say, okay, this is what I did. And so start to kind of just in the trenches. I haven't systematized my business fully. I wouldn't say that I'm working on the business more than in the business yet. I'm on the upward track here. But I basically decided this is the business that I want to be in the rest of my life, more so than just something that got me through until I could do my favorite thing. And that everything that I'm doing that I enjoy doing with working with others feeds out of what I learned in what I call my School of Hard Knocks MBA. And I didn't have time to do that. I didn't have time to start another business, if you will, to talk about these things with people. And so if I want to do that, I got to figure out how to get this business working better without me there all the time. And so, the ability to realize its essential point in, or essential role in my passion project as building me as a human being, building me as a business owner, and providing valuable services to people. But then also, how do I help other people do that? Now I got to always be improving myself. I got to always be learning these lessons, because as soon as I fully take my hat off or drop the bags and then become the guy that teaches and not the guy that does anymore, I think, your shelf life starts. The clock starts. As soon as you stop learning, as soon as you stop growing as an individual, your relevance is got a time stamp on that. So continuing to learn and grow on my business, but then also starting to talk about what we're doing that's making a difference every day.
Gotcha. So we're here to talk about your experience with Belay Solutions. I understand you engaged Belay Solutions and brought a virtual assistant on board, but let's go back to before you engaged with them. What were some of the problems you were having that led you to reach out and work with Belay?
I was experiencing a huge volume of inquiries from without spending really very much marketing at all. We're very active on social media. And I try to do a really good job of kind of continuously posting, here's what we're doing, and getting a little bit in the nitty gritty on the technical execution. And I was finding that by putting stuff out on social media, by talking about our process and just here, we're over at this job, we're trying to use this type of thing to waterproof here. This is where it was rotten before. This is why we're doing it this way instead of the way that it was done before. And I started kind of, after doing that for several years, I started getting people reaching out to me and said, we've been watching you on Instagram for 2 years and we saved our money and now we're ready to do this kitchen remodel. We want you to do it. And so kind of building this residual demand in some sense, but I never had time from what I was actually building our current projects and in the field and doing those. And I just had this huge backlog. I mean, almost, in business, it's good to give an answer within 24 hours. In some ways, that's not even fast enough in the digital age. And so I wasn't losing the leads. I was directing them to my website. They were all kind of going in a list. But then I'd get done with every day and I'd look and I'd see I got 17 people that, and the 17th person contacted me 4 weeks ago, and that's missed opportunity for me. And in a sense, trying to, that everybody that inquires on your website isn't your client. But having a desire to, every time they touch my business and they come through our pipeline, I want them to either, be brought in and do services for them, or I want them to leave a more educated consumer, because the construction industry is rife with people that aren't doing it the right way. And in residential remodeling, there's a lot of hack jobs out there. There's a lot of people that don't have the right licenses that are trying to get the homeowner to pull the permit so that they can skirt by certain things or whatever. And so I just kind of felt a burden for, if I can't do the remodel for them, I want them to leave more educated about how to find someone to work for them. So no matter what, it to be a positive experience and to just trust that long term, anytime somebody interacts with my business, it being positive is going to work out for us as a company. It's going to be better for where we live in our local community. And so, that was the main reason why I contacted Belay. I found out, like a lot of people found out about Belay through Michael Hyatt's book about personal assistants. And he gives you a kind of a criteria for whether you should hire somebody in-house, yourself, local, whether they could be virtual, and kind of gives you a framework. And for me, I didn't want to have to go through the interview process. I wrongly assumed, like I think I've talked to a lot of my subs and a lot of people, is like, you should get a virtual assistant. Well, we got a lot of stuff that, we need here locally. And like, do you really though? Think about this. In this day and age, when you can, even the small municipalities where we work with here, you can pull permits online. You can submit documents. And that's largely was accelerated through the new way we do work, remote and things like that. So a lot of municipalities have brought these systems online. Control over the inbox and the calendar and all these things don't require the person to sit with you. So in a long time, I had let wanting an actual physical body that could go down to the planning and inspection department and sign and pick the permit up, that one function, delay me hiring someone because I didn't want to have to go do that. And so I was letting 90% of the other tasks that someone virtual could do, or 95% of stuff that could be done virtually, become the go by the wayside, while that 5% kind of physical thing, I just waited. And so the fact that, Michael Hyatt kind of shoots you straight, like debunks whether or not you really can't afford it, if you think you should have one, it should have been 6 months ago that you hired them. In my case, years ago. And so I just said, all right, the fact that Belay lets you do it in a subscription base, the fact that they've already vetted their people, the discovery call was incredible, because they're figuring out what apps, are you a Mac or a PC? What industries are you in? And they already kind of have somebody in their Rolodex that is trained, that has a technical aptitude, that's going to be doing this. And then also they take the time to discover your industries. So for me personally, I'm in real estate with the short-term rentals. I'm also in construction. We have all kind of a couple different businesses, and the ability to somebody to kind of cover down on all my pain points in multiple businesses. But then also, my particular assistant is a licensed realtor, so has an understanding of rental markets, of the housing, and realtors, mixed emotions depending on who you've dealt with if you're in residential construction, but there is a knowledge of a lot of things that overlap in construction. And they found somebody that has that after discovering with me. And so, and then I was immediately able to just give her my inbox. That's kind of hard to give. Say, hey, here's the login. I'm going to let you have my inbox. I'm going to create one for you too. And so you can either reply and people can think it's me. We'll talk about that, what that looks like. Or you have your own email, you have your own, that's our company, branding. So it's like it's an employee and you're coming from us. And we worked through and immediately kind of said, here's everybody that's on my list. I want you to go to every one of them and I want you to respond to them. I want you to explain, Nathan has hired me. He has felt bad that let's be transparent. I'm sorry that I didn't respond to you. It's so hard to keep up this day and age. My name is so-and-so. I'm his assistant. We're going back. We don't know if you still need a remodel. We feel bad about it. If you do, we've cleaned up our act here. And immediately that entire stack of people that was giving me anxiety that I hadn't called them back. And then we moved on to set up a process where this is what a lead looks like. This is how I want you to screen them. I want you to ask them these things and filter it to where essentially there's 30 or 40 steps in our process before I go out or I sign a contract or whatever. And she takes care of 24 of those. So before I was having to move the customer through all 30 of these steps before I was getting paid or before, and even she's setting up criteria for where we say, hey, here is our working with a general contractor brochure. We don't think this is going to work for us, but here's something we put together that you can reference. And this is how you check insurance. This is how you check references. This is how you verify licensing. These are all these things that we see as common pain points for consumers in your position. And it's really good looking too. So it has all our high res photos and things. So in some ways they end up saying, oh my goodness, this is incredible. We want to, and my assistant's doing all of that and essentially serving up to me the most suitable clients for us that we serve better, but then also giving a positive experience to even the people that don't have the budget necessarily for the job that where we do, but then also get more educated.
Gotcha. Good stuff. So tell us, what does life look like now that your virtual assistant is on the team and those problems are being solved? What are the top 2 or 3 things that the top 2 or 3 benefits, most impactful benefits for you?
Well, I think that anybody that has an employee or somebody on the team, whether contractor or otherwise, that when it's working, it's phenomenal. To come back to your inbox and see confirmation. I mean, this podcast interview, I got the inquiry from Belay and they were saying, hey, this guy's trying to help out construction guys and looking for, to talk about this. I didn't even respond for a couple of days because I viewed that as, I just got to write them back. But then, my assistant said, would you like me to respond back to that? And I said, yeah, already know the days on my calendar that I'm available. And so I still find it hard to let go of some of these things. And when you let go and when you train them appropriately, and then stuff just happens. The interview gets scheduled in a block of time that we've already determined as a time. And I show up and I sit down and have this conversation with you, and I'm not worried about it. She's already got the link in my calendar. I don't have to go through my inbox. I just click on it and we're on this call. And she does that for all my leads. She, even just today, we had somebody email back and say, we really want to go ahead. I charge for estimates and I charge for design services as well. So the initial consult we charge for, she sets that up. As soon as they say we're ready to go with the design retainer, she does the design agreement, she pastes it. And so to see QuickBooks notification that I'm getting paid, that I did nothing, design retainer deposited. And all I did was say, yep, sounds good, send them. They had one question, I answer it. and then money's in my account. And it can be hard to fork out the initial capital that it costs to bring somebody online. And it does take, in my particular, I would say that it was about the 90-day point where there was a net benefit from the virtual assistant. And Michael Hyatt talks about that. It's going to take a little while. And even the Belay customer care. So I have a representative at Belay that schedules kind of checkup calls and gets to, okay, what's the pain point? What's going on? And has industry knowledge of things that are going on. And then one of the recommendations are you taking enough time to train the virtual assistant? Like, it's easy to get on a call and, just handle all the whack-a-mole game. Okay, this client, all right, you go through the list of kind of pain points. Okay, do this. But are you taking time each week that's just training, where you're going through and you're expanding and you're I'm sharing my screen and say, okay, let me talk to you about how I do an initial estimate. Let me talk to you about this. And then even letting her do it. So now you share your screen with me. Now I'm going to walk you through the steps. We're going to get you into these different, software things. And I had to do that for QuickBooks. All right, here's how we generate an invoice. Here's how you attach the design retainer agreement to the invoice, but also make sure we get the signature. And then letting her do it. And then now she's good, because we took that hour, we went through it, I showed her, then I let her do it. Then there's a couple of questions, but then taking some time and realizing that training, that hour, that 2 hours that you spent, it's hard to sit down at the computer for an hour or two, but then realize that hour or two gives back now continuously. And then to see, and so I guess the biggest thing would say is I would usually end up kind of prioritizing design and prioritizing leads when my most active project started to kind of tailor off. Okay, we've gotten drywall hung, we're painting, and then I would be blitzing through to get design done and to get the next leads through, so that when we finished, when my crew that's in the field, because I have 2 guys kind of full time that are actually do a lot of the demo and the transition stuff between subs, I'd run out of work for them sometimes. And I'd have, a week or two because we hadn't finished design. All right, and I have other things that we do. We do real estate stuff on our family, so I could put them over there. But that's reactionary use of my skill set. That's eating into my bottom line. Sometimes I can't give them that. So now my pipeline's full, and I have leads retained. My design retainer, we articulate that this is, you go in order, first in, first out kind of thing. This is who's in front of you. And my calendar is full going forward. And that's been enabled by an assistant. She's enabled that next job. They've paid me. The first design meeting scheduled. I show up, and she's handled that. Now, I did go out once, but I essentially get to touch the client once in a meeting, in face to face, and then I'm out, and then she handles the next 15 steps, and I show up again. Now I'm retained. The designer schedule has been deconflicted, whatever. She knows when I'm available. That's all been handled. And I show up and get to do what I do, which is do the stuff that lays the framework for a successful build. That's phenomenal. It's almost impossible to talk about what value that is. And then the fact that she's getting retainers booked, she's getting them paid, is more than, even if we end up not doing the project, just design services and getting those kind of things going is more than paying for her services to that point. So yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say is stop putting it off by the couple reasons you think you shouldn't, and give it a try. And Belay allows you to do that. There's no contracts for years. You do a discovery call that gets a little bit up front, and then you start out with a lower number of hours, maybe the cheaper thing, and then you can throttle it up. Usually they work with you on that. If you need more than that, they can find another one, and then that virtual assistant can train them. You have, in some ways, I kind of, in my mind, was thinking, I'll get this one for now. I'll do it for 6 months, and then maybe I can bring one in person, and then have this one train the person, and then we'll phase out of using Belay. And the reality is there's very little that she can't do virtually that even makes it, and as I kind of view it as a longer term thing. Like, it just doesn't really need to be. I always, I'll just go ahead and pay. It's a little bit maybe more on an hour by hour basis than if you paid somebody directly. But that's almost like going out and painting the job yourself versus hiring the painter. Like, the painter's going to get it done faster. And, most GCs know that you're not making money painting the job and keeping what you'd be paying the painter. You're making the money by having a couple painters working for you, or several different trades all over town. So pay this sub that does the things that you can't do, and that they do better than you do. Like, and actually like doing it. They actually are excited to help you, excited to knock things off your list. And, I just said the other day, I was like, I cannot believe that I had been putting this task off for 2 weeks. And I finally realized that I'm being an idiot. And I just handed it off to you, gave you 5 minutes of instruction. And 2 hours later, it was done. And the report was in my inbox, and that had the data that I needed to make the decision and send this email to the client. And I'd literally been delaying that for 2 weeks because I didn't want to do a 10-minute call with a virtual assistant. And so that's where I'm at now, is just I'm able to hand off so many things, and we're doing training. There's just ongoing training, ongoing quality assurance, ongoing leadership and management. But when you do that and you're home with your family and you don't even have your phone on you, and then you pick your phone up and you realize 2 or 3 consults got scheduled, that you see an invoice got paid, and you didn't do any of that. It's incredible.
Yeah, I like that. So you've talked about a lot of benefits, and the way I think about this, the way I tell people to think about it, is your time as a business owner is worth $1,000 an hour. Mm-hmm. And if you can find somebody else to do it for $50 an hour, $75 an hour, you're still $925 an hour or $950 an hour ahead. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the cost. It's about you really need to look at the opportunity cost. And
yes,
what's the opportunity cost of doing this administrative stuff? So lots of benefits. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let's take a couple of minutes and you talk about your podcast.
Okay. Yeah. My podcast is called Life on Target, and essentially, taking aim and hitting the mark. And I like to approach, business it's easy to think of business in the marketplace as something, disconnected with family. We leave our family, we go to the office, but in reality, the marketplace is very much intertwined with family. It's how you provide for your family. It is, you have employees that have family. And so my approach is in mostly small business oriented, but to kind of try to, what I say, reverse the post-industrial revolution mindset back to a pre-industrial revolution mindset, which is that the business is out of the home. Business is home centric. And in, early pre-industrial revolution in America, and I've seen this statistic, used to be 68% of homes had a small business, and it's like 5% now. So, and I think that there's always opportunity for a small firm to give better service, but you just don't need the volume that a bigger firm takes. So I am encouraging ownership over, first of all, own your personal discipline. So we talk a lot about working out. We talk a lot about time management, and this goes right into, why I actually have a virtual assistant podcast episode outlined, because I think there's a lot of people out there that could benefit, even if they don't own a business. Tim Ferriss, I think, has an episode about that, where he outsources stuff for personal life. I mean, even just to say, if you're don't even own your own business and you're making a pretty good retainer hour kind of thing, having somebody to schedule appointments and things like that. So yeah, so Life on Target, we're at almost a year now of episodes. I talked to a lot of small business owners and people that are running businesses out of their home, and how do they integrate that with educating the next generation. We homeschool our children. I take my kids with me in the truck on the jobs. I let them, interact with clients and subcontractors. So in some of the ways, we're developing an multi-generational entrepreneurial mindset, and giving my kids an education in how a lot is possible when you're willing to work hard and roll up your sleeves, because there's a lot of people looking for handouts. There's a lot of people wanting to sit around and do the minimum. When you do above and beyond and work hard, sky's the limit. So all that stuff, my personal website, kind of where I talk about all this, is Spearing, my last name, SPEARING.co. And that has a blog, podcasts, and kind of just at the intersection of family, business, and community.
Good stuff. So Nathan Spearing of Transform NC. If you want to find out more and connect with Nathan, go to spearing.co. Be sure to check out the Life on Target podcast. Nathan, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and talk about your experience. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.